forgiven, but maybe it struck me more this time than ever because of the world we're living in today. I'll give you an example. This week I attended a formal theater production, and during the show in the first half, a woman to my right and a few rows up started shouting expletives at her unknown seatmate, and she started saying, "I paid for this seat, I deserve this seat, I can do what I want," and then started calling that person names. There was a skirmish, a visible scuffle, and everybody was rifled by this process, and security came in and removed them, but I had a difficult time going back and getting my attention on what was happening because I was so disrupted by that unbelievable behavior. Even in a formal production, it seems, people are unable today to maintain their composure, their sense of grace, their willingness to be patient or understanding and even kind. Believe me, the seatmate to my right was no picnic either. He kept stealing the armrest and leaning over into my chest to watch the show, and I had to then lean over to Dave and get in his line of view, and I had to clarify that he was to my left so you didn't think he was the person on my right. He was not. Well, this is only one example. I could probably name 12 examples every single day, as I'm sure you can too, right? The people who jump in front of you on the highway or jump in front of you in the grocery store and are just rude about it. They're not even kind in any way. So we've lost our moorings, our center, our sense of balance, our belief in the good will of others, and our willingness to tolerate even small inconveniences with grace. So I want to talk about power. I want to talk about our opportunity, indeed our obligation to exert God-given rights and power to forgive. Jesus says, if you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. So let's be honest, there are huge benefits to being a forgiving person. First of all, there's psychological benefits. Forgiveness, we know, leads to reduced stress, anxiety, and depression. Letting go of resentment and anger alleviates those psychological concerns that we have when we are the one who forgives, which then bleeds into our physical well-being. Studies suggest that forgiveness is associated with lower blood pressure, improved heart health, strong immune functions, whereas holding on to grudges increases the negativity of those things. It certainly builds stronger interpersonal relationships because forgiveness allows us to foster empathy, compassion, and understanding. It allows us to move beyond conflict and rebuild trust and connection. There's a little bit of self-healing involved. It's often described as a process that we use to release ourselves from negative emotions and experiences rather than holding them back. And forgiveness is a catalyst for personal growth and transformation. It requires courage and empathy and a willingness to let go of the things that might be bothering us, right? And finally, there's a spiritual and ethical value to being a forgiven person. It's a fundamental virtue, and it's seen as a way to transcend ego, cultivate compassion, and promote harmony and peace in a broader community. So, why not be forgiving? Just think, if you did this a dozen times a day, you might even avoid doctors altogether. Of course, I'm just kidding, but you get the idea. To be forgiving is to be healthy, balanced, and a contributing member to a greater good. But it is his last sentence of this gospel that is the most disruptive, the most problematic. Jesus says, if you retain anyone's sins, they are retained. Wait, what? Is it possible that if I harbor grudges or extend ill wishes upon someone else, I'm generating a rift in the spiritual realm? Am I perhaps binding myself to that person unnecessarily, holding them hostage to a behavior that they themselves might regret? Am I locking myself and this other party into an earthly version of justice and possibly interfering with God's grace at the end of the day? I'll be honest, I hadn't considered that kind of power till I started preparing this homily. That's a lot of responsibility, and frankly, it makes me shudder just a little bit. If that's the case, then I have to dole out forgiveness all day long. After all, everyone deserves it. Where would I even begin? So I'd like to think about this like ripples in a pond, right? There's that outer version, the impersonal, the people I don't even know. These are the people who jump in front of you on the freeway and so on. You don't even know them. So the armrest thieves and the catcallers at events. I can't even claim I'm perfect at forgiving those people sometimes. So I'm getting better at it, though. Instead of hoping to see that obnoxious driver get a ticket miles down the road, I've learned to make up stories so I can better understand the situation. Like, oh, she's rushing to the hospital because grandma's dying and she has to get there, right? Makes it a little easier to be forgiving at the impersonal level. Plus, it can be rather amusing to make up stories. It's harder to get forgiveness, though, the closer you get to the intrapersonal relationship. These are the people in your life that you love. These are the people who, when they cause an infraction, it disrupts, it breaks trust, it causes hurt. And that's a problem, right? So I've learned that any relationship worth its salt must cross the bridge of forgiveness. Because if you're really in relationship, you are being vulnerable. You are being open, you are taking risks, and you are making mistakes. It's somewhat necessary at the interpersonal level. When I'm the one needing to grant forgiveness, I've learned to first challenge my own presuppositions. Why did I think that person was wrong? What if they were right and I was the one who was wrong? Could that be? Is there maybe one more view to the situation and not just one way? Usually there is. Second, I've learned to put their needs and feelings before mine, to step back and take that 1,000-foot viewpoint, look at the situation and realize I am standing in the presence of a child of God. And if I can put them back in their childhood and remember where they came from, I can be a little bit more empathic about what might be happening in this particular moment. And third, I have learned that I have to fix it early. Reestablish connection right away. Don't let it fester. And then when you do reestablish, be ready with the right words, right? Because that's a fragile moment, and I'm in control of that moment. So I have to do that with grace. I sometimes rehearse it just to make sure I'm ready to say the right things in the right way. Certainly, I'm more in control of those situations when I'm the one doing the forgiving, but sometimes I'm the one needing the forgiveness. Of course, in that case, I cannot control for whether or not they're going to forgive me. However, I do know that I have to do something to put us back in right relationship, to try to break that bind and make sure I'm doing everything I can to be the best soul that I can be as I walk this planet. So there's a recipe for a great apology, and it involves 3 parts. The first part is you have to own it. You have to own whatever you said or did that caused that infraction. And you cannot use but. I'm sorry that happened, but. And you cannot justify, yes, but there were all these things that were happening. That's excusing the behavior. So you first have to own your actual behavior. Call it out, claim it. The second part is to acknowledge that your decision, your action, whatever it was, or your inaction, had a negative impact on the recipient or recipients. And you have to acknowledge that you know that that is what happened because of those actions on your part. And the third part is to offer restitution, knowing full well that they might not accept it, but you have to offer it, right? And hopefully, over time, they may trust you again and come back into the fold of your friendship. Altogether, it might sound like this. I'm sorry, Nicole, that I didn't complete my planned parts of our meeting before the meeting happened. I realized that my actions made you look unprepared, and it compromised you in front of a large group. I cannot undo what happened in this moment. And I understand that you may never trust me again to prepare my materials in time. But I will never stop trying to mend that. I will never stop giving you materials in advance, in fact, even a few more days in advance, in the hopes that someday you might forgive me. I actually said that in front of an audience where I was presenting one day, and a woman in the front row looked at me and whispered, "Oh my God, will you marry me?" Apparently it's not easy to regain trust, right? But the last part, that last circle, is the intrapersonal, forgiving myself. recognizing that I am human, that I do make mistakes, and that I sometimes need to forgive myself. Have you ever made a mistake that you've replayed on an endless loop over and over and over? Yeah, that is what I'm talking about. So Daniel Pink, one of my favorite authors in the business realm, just released a brand new book called The Power of Regret: How Looking Backward Moves Us Forward. I almost couldn't put the book down. He starts the book by acknowledging that many people find regret to be problematic and are in fact proud to tattoo on their bodies, no regrets. And it seems to be a sense of freedom from any sense of norm. I'm just going to move forward and do whatever I want to do. And he would suggest that is problematic because there's a benefit. Even though it's a negative emotion, it has powerful healing properties. Think about it like an emotional procedure, like the doctor would put stitches in an open wound or reset a broken bone. It hurts at first, but it's necessary for the mending to happen on the other side. So he says if you're going to experience regret, which you are, you have to ask yourself a series of questions. First, if my actions or inactions impacted others, are repairs needed? And am I able to fix it? Second, if I have harmed myself from my actions or my inactions, can I still fix it? And am I willing to do so? If I cannot fix it, Pink advises that we at least it. I may have earned a ticket for reckless driving, but at least I didn't hurt anybody. I may have been in a harmful marriage, but at least I have beautiful children out of the process. He says that at leasting something releases the guilt and moves it into relief, right? And that eases the pressure that we might have. And then he says, finally, practice self-disclosure. Look in the mirror and have an honest conversation and give yourself that perfect apology. Relive the moment, learn from the moment, and then release the moment. If we don't do this work, Pink warns, then we are apt to confuse feelings with thinking and thinking with actions. And it gets all muddled up and we make more bad choices. Our ability to self-forgive might even be a precursor to our ability to forgive others. I personally think holiness is born out of forgiveness. Whether I'm forgiving others, seeking forgiveness from others, or forgiving myself, I'm processing life's lessons as I strive to get closer and closer to God. I am a spiritual being having a human experience. I'm moving toward holiness because of the journey, because of the life lessons. After all, there was only one perfect human in history, and he stretched out his arms and died. So I've been focusing a lot on the last two sentences of this gospel proclamation about forgiveness, but I want to bring us back to the notion of easing this burden, because if you go to the very first sentence, Jesus said, "Receive the Holy Spirit," and that is a joyful thing. That gives us a companion to walk with us through these difficult moments, to ease that lift, to help us feel better, and to know that we are not alone as we endure those challenging moments. So, at the end of today's gospel, Jesus commissions his emissaries as he would to you and I if he were here. So right now, I'm going to invite you to receive this blessing. Close your eyes or gentle or soften your view. Open your palms before you openly on your lap if you'd like, and listen carefully to the words he offers you and I. Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you retain anyone's sins, they are retained. Do you feel the power now?